If you're like me and you're really into classic cars, and I assume you are because you're watching this channel in this video right now, then you're probably looking at one for maybe a second or a third car, a fun car. Now, if you're looking for a classic fun car, you want it to be something exciting, which usually means something like a convertible. Now, if you have 40 to 50 grand to spend on one, you've got a ton of options. However, the saying usually goes that when you drop the top, you up the price, which means convertibles typically tend to be expensive, especially when they get classic. Now, if you have 20 grand, you still have a lot of options, and 10 grand, you could even go out and buy something like a Carmen Ghia. But what if you have something a lot less than that? Something under 5 grand. Well, your options are usually limited to a Miata. However, I just went out and bought another classic convertible for under 5 grand. $3,500 in fact, and here it is. Take a look at that. That is my new to me 1976 Mercedes 450 SL that I bought last week for just $3,500. Today in this episode of TFL Classics, we're going to see just how much convertible Benz you get for $3,500, what's right about it and what's wrong with it. Welcome to Budget Benz. Now, just a quick brief overview about these old Mercedes. The Mercedes SL debuted in the early 50s in the form of the Gullwing and the 300 SL. Those cars are valued at upwards of $1.5–2 million in some situations. Then they went on to vehicles like the Pagoda SL, which were the 1960s models, very elegant. And then starting in the early 70s, Mercedes came out with this car. The internal code is the R107. And this was a very popular car here in the United States throughout the 70s and the 80s. They built these from the early 70s all the way up to 1989 here in the United States, and it was kind of the ultimate Mercedes Grand Tourer. This one has a hardtop on it right now, but it is a convertible. This hardtop comes off, and then behind the rear seats is a convertible soft top. Now, the funny thing about these cars is value is pretty much entirely dependent on condition and scarcity, of course, but here in the US, according to Hagerty, which is one of the premier sites for classic car valuations, the 1976 Mercedes-Benz SL will go on average for about $15,000. They're slowly appreciating. So why is this one so cheap? Well, it really depends on condition. Let me start with the front of this car. It's pretty clear that this car has been repainted, and I think it's probably due to an accident, just a gut feeling, but it feels like that certain components within the front have been replaced here, like the crash bar. It does have a clean Colorado title, and it is in my name, so it is, good to go, and it drives straight down the road, and the panel gaps are pretty good. So it looks like whoever repaired it, if it wasn't an accident, did a nice job. But the original color of this car would have been gold, and I can show you how I know that in a second. Other things you'll notice about this car, well, it looks really good from about 10–20 feet away, but as you get closer, you can see that the paint is certainly seen some use and some age. Now, the person we bought it from owned it since 1997, so they had it in the family a long time, which is always good to see. And overall, it's in, pretty good condition, actually. I'll go over some of the issues, but we'll start with the engine. Now, in 1976, these Mercedes had a 4.5 liter V8. Called the 450 SL. I'll go ahead and pop it here. And by 1976, this car was way down on power, largely to emissions. So I think this car was rated at something like 180 horsepower, something like that. And we'll go over a full features video coming up, but this is just a quick overview. But check it out, there it is. So 4.5 liter V8 overhead cam engine, right around 180 horsepower, but well into the 200s in terms of torque. And you can see just some of the emissions clogging. So huge catalytic converters underneath the hood here. Some other things that are worth noting about this engine, it's a fuel injected engine. So this uses something called the Bosch K-Jetronic system, which was a continuous injection system. Starting in 1975, they went to an all mechanical injection. So unfortunately, a lot of that means that it's expensive to fix when it goes wrong, and parts are expensive. Now, this particular car has an indicated 142,000 miles, and it runs fairly well. It's got some kind of worrying ticks and clatters. This one, like I said, runs really nicely when it's warm. It's silent, quiet, and pretty powerful. However, getting it started, especially in cold days, can be a bit of a challenge One of the common issues with these cars is this guy right here. This is called the WUR, or the warm-up regulator, and it kind of delivers extra fuel to the system when it's cold, and they tend to go bad with they've got like a diaphragm in there they'll go bad. And a lot of the issues down with these cars is due to age. So they have a lot of rubber components and a lot of vacuum lines, and when they start to fail as they get old and cracked and worn out, then you start developing a lot of issues. And I think this car has a lot of those. For example, they've got these subframe bushings underneath, which are pretty worn out, and it does leak oil. But $3,500, what do you expect? Now I'll show you what it sounds like. Let me start her up here. So I'd say it actually overall runs pretty well. $3,500. And this car is idling smooth. It doesn't smoke. It's pretty quiet. And when you get it out on the open road, it's very smooth. It's a really silky engine. I'll show you some revs here. Yeah, so it runs pretty good. Go to oil pressure too, you'll see that pops right up. And it's about 25 to 30 at idle. So I'm very pleased with that. Go ahead and shut her down. Now, these old SLs, especially in the mid-70s here, they weren't sports cars, and they were really never intended to be sports cars. This is an ultimate grand tour. So the suspension is soft, and it doesn't handle particularly nicely, but it's smooth and firm around the corners. And the thing that is so awesome about these old Mercedes is just the build quality. Even an old worn out one like this, listen to this door. That is so solid. And it doesn't squeak, it doesn't rattle, it just does what it needs to do. So as you can see, the body lines are pretty straight. Coming down the side, I'll try to get you a shot. Yeah, really nice condition. There's no rocker rust, the floors are good. Even back here, it's a little dirty as you can see, but no rust to be found. Now, one of the issues with this one is the hard tops are heavy and they're kind of hard to get on and off, and it looks like that someone has dropped this hard top a number of times on this trunk lid, so you can see that the paint is starting to crack there, and there is even a pretty good sized chip there, and then same thing over here. So maybe that's something we can address by repainting the trunk. But out back, same deal. It's very straight. It's a very solid car overall. Big trunk in this 450 SL. There you go. I don't know if you can see that super well, but there's your battery. Carpeted trunk. We even have the original toolkit here, which is nice and complete. So, full set of tools. This stuff is really cool to see, especially in a vehicle of this vintage. Now, what works and what doesn't? The brakes are just incredible. These cars were known for having good brakes when they were new, and even some, 43 years later, they just work super well. Four-wheel disc brakes, and I think this is the best stopping classic car I've ever driven. I mean, you just pound on the anchors, and this thing comes to a quick and immediate stop. Really incredible braking performance. All the headlights work, so low beams, high beams, that all works. Turn signals work, the fog lights work, hazards work well, windshield wipers work. One thing that doesn't work super well are the squirters. It only really squirts out of one of these little nozzles on the hood, so that is going to need to be addressed. But you can see that some of the repaint is wearing through a little bit. It's a slightly different shade of red than the hood. But overall, a lot of stuff worked. Really good heater, incredible heater. Both windows go down, power steering works. And I'll show you the interior because it's really a beautiful interior. So this is a really cool material. This is called MB Tex. Mercedes uses this on pretty much all of their cars. And it's a really durable, almost kind of like a vinyl finish, but on the seats, it's just super comfortable. As you can see, I have a wire here. Let me move that. But the seats are in overall really nice condition, I would say. There is some wear over here on the driver's seat. It hasn't worn through, but will need to be addressed. And the worst part of the interior is this carpet is all frayed and gross and nasty down here, so that needs to be replaced, as you can see. Okay, let's go ahead and check out this interior. So like I said, very solid feeling doors, really big opening, and this door panel is in very nice shape. I love this interior color. It's kind of like a burnt orange, but it's really nice. It's not quite brown, it's not too orange, it's just perfect. So, okay, first thing you notice coming inside is the absolutely incredible size of the steering wheel. It's almost hard to slide your legs under, but it's huge steering wheel and it's padded, of course. Full gauges, so this one's got temperature, oil pressure, fuel, that all works. Nice big speedometer, there you go, 142,000 miles. And then on the right you have a clock, which works, and a tachometer. So on the left side of the steering wheel, you'll find a couple of things. Obviously you have your traditional foot parking brake with the brake release there. And you'll find your light controls up here as well. So lights, and then you pull it out to engage the fog lights. Wipers are over here on the turn signal stalk and is cruise control. Cruise control works well. And then on the right side of the steering wheel is where your key actually goes. This one has an aftermarket tape deck in it, which I don't love, but it works, and I have the original, it's just in really poor condition. Then we have our power antenna control, that works perfectly, and then our heated rear window for defrost. Really strange heat and air conditioning controls in these cars. They're actually dual zone, so one for the passenger and then one for the driver, or swap that around actually. But you know, fan control and then AC. I haven't tried it, I don't think it works. Basic shifter, but super easy to use. I mean, one finger, look, just super easy to actuate. And you have your standard low. S stands for slope, so that would gauge second gear, drive, neutral, reverse, and park. This is actually a 3-speed car. And then your window controls are over here next to your hazard switch. So pretty standard, just push the button and up they go. Works well on both sides. And then you have your hazard switch there, but beautifully designed interior. I love these 3 gauges, or these 3 vents rather, across the dashboard. One over there, and then a locking glove box as well. Let's see, what else can I show you? This car is the full American spec, and I say that because it's got a couple things that people really don't like, especially coming from European markets. That is the 5-mile-an-hour bumpers. So per legislation, all cars in the US at this time had to have these huge 5-mile-an-hour bumpers, and they really kind of ruin the overall shape of the front and the back. And then we also have chrome wheels, because it was America in the 70s, and chrome wheel arches up here. So full American spec. I may want to change that as well. We'll see. And then per American legislation, you also see this has the quad headlights. So we had to have sealed beam headlights back in the day. So we couldn't have the really cool flush Euro headlights. But once again, look how far that front bumper sticks out from the nose. It's pretty incredible. Well guys, thank you for watching this quick introduction video. Let me know, do you think I got ripped off by this Mercedes, or do you think I got a pretty good deal? Transmission shifts smooth, engine works pretty well, good power. Thanks for watching guys. I'll see you guys next time right here at TFL Classics.